Hi friends, Krista here. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams. I'm so excited today to talk to you about some books that are coming out in the month of April that I'm really excited for. In the last couple of years, I have started taking a look at books that are coming out and filming seasonal anticipated reads videos. And this is the first time that I've had to break it up a little bit because I have 10 books that come out in April, and I did not want to have this video be so long by doing April, May, and June, because I also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have another 10 that come out in May and June. So I'm splitting it up. I'm going to do the April books now, and then later in April, I'll talk about the books that are coming out in May and June. So if you know my tastes and my reading at all, the majority of these books are going to be historical fiction with a little bit of contemporary sprinkled in, a little bit of suspense sprinkled in, or mystery. But for the most part, these are all going to be historical. And I have requested all that are available on NetGalley. So my score, my percentage or feedback ratio on NetGalley is very close to 50% right now. But because I just requested 20 books, almost 20 books, that percentage is going to go down if I get approved for some of them. So far, I've only been approved for a few of them, but it's fine because these books are so exciting. So let's just jump right in. The first book that I have actually comes out towards the end of March. It comes out this week, March 28th. But for some reason, I didn't find it or see it or notice it when I was doing my January, February, March anticipated reads, my winter anticipated reads. So I'm adding it onto this list. Since it's close to the end of March, it's close enough to April that I'm counting it. And it's called The Lonely Hearts Book Club. This is by Lucy Gilmore. It is a contemporary, but listen to how many of my buzzwords are in this description, right? It takes place at a library. It involves books. There's a curmudgeon character. So we follow a small town librarian, Sloane, who is lonely and bored and not thrilled with her life, a little bit depressed and just lonely. One of the highlights of her days is when this elderly gentleman, Arthur, comes in, who's a bit of a curmudgeon, and his witty sarcasm and their banter back and forth just brings her so much joy in her day, in her not very exciting days. One day she notices Arthur doesn't come in at all. He doesn't come in for the next couple days, and she is concerned for him. So she goes to his house and knocks on his door and finds out that he's practically bedridden. He's not doing very well health-wise. Through their interactions, she starts up a book club with Arthur, and other lonely people in their small town kind of join this book club. I don't know how they discover it or whatever, but it's just this group of people who are lonely and feeling isolated, don't have a huge support system. They become each other's support system as they talk about books, and they each have a book or two that has greatly impacted their lives, and they share that with each other. And I just think it sounds so wonderful. A curmudgeon old character, a library setting, book club, books bringing people together, and then this aspect of kind of found family or new friendship that develops centered around books. I'm in. So that's The Lonely Hearts Book Club. Very excited for that one on March 28th. Then in April, starting right off on April 1st, a book that I already have, thank you, Amazon Prime First Reads. I have A Girl Called Samson by Amy Harmon. I love Amy Harmon. I've read 4 or 5 of her books and have loved each of them. She writes in a variety of different genres, but my favorite are her historical books. This is a historical book set during the Revolutionary War. We follow a young girl, Deborah, and in her childhood, her dad abandons their family, and the mom is really struggling. So she sends Deborah out to be an indentured servant. And then I think 20 years later, Deborah disguises herself as a boy to fight in the Continental Army in the Revolutionary War. So I don't really know much more than that, but it comes out on April 1st. I have it on my Kindle. I'm very excited to read it because I love Amy Harmon. The next 5 books all come out on April 4th. April 4th is going to be an amazing day for book releases. The first one is this kind of historical gothic fantasy / sci-fi, I think more fantasy, more paranormal, but it's called The Last Heir to Blackwood Library by Hester Fox. And this one is a little bit dark and creepy, but it takes place in post-World War I England. And this young woman inherits a mysterious library, inherits this house, which has this mysterious library. The staff of the house try to warn her away from the library, but she cannot help herself. Who could? And she finds herself drawn to this huge, massive library. And within the library, it's possible that there are some ghosts or some other kind of force or secrets that she has to untangle. So I love this idea of this big house with a fancy library and a little bit of a gothic feel, mystery feel to it. I'm in. And the cover is stunning. Stunning! Next on April 4th, I have The Vanishing at Castle Moreau. This is by Jamie Jo Wright. I've read a few Jamie Jo Wright books. She writes Christian suspense, I'm calling it. There is a level of historical as well. The first line of the description of this one says, a haunting legend, an ominous curse, a search for a secret buried deep within the castle walls. This is a dual timeline tale of two women who must do all they can to seek light amid the darkness shrouding Castle Moreau. So again, a creepy old building, castle. Jamie Jo Wright always kind of borders on the line of paranormal. You feel like there are ghosts involved, but are they really? There's this level of intensity and suspensefulness that I really enjoy, but I trust her now. I've read enough of her books that I trust that she's not going to get too scary for me, but I really like her books. Next up, I have The Home for Wayward Girls by Marcia Bradley. This one takes place in the 1990s. We follow Loretta, who lives with her very extreme conservative parents who run basically like a ranch or a home for troubled youth. But they're abusive and incredibly strict. And Loretta finds herself drawn to hanging out with these kids that come to the home. She spends most of her time with the residents, teaching them survival skills in case they ever get an opportunity to escape. She has a huge fear of her father. And then at one point, something huge happens and she finds herself trying to escape and using these survival skills that she's been teaching to the residents for years and trying to get to New York City. So I think that sounds good. I love that it takes place in the 1990s. I'm very curious to see how the 90s, how that setting is going to play a part in this story. I'm also a little bit wary of this one because I don't know if the family is like extreme Christian extremists and then how Christianity is going to be portrayed, or are they just strict and conservative? I'm not sure where it's going to go, and I'm not familiar with Marcia Bradley, so I'm not sure of her writing and all that stuff, but I'm curious enough that I want to try to read it. Next up, I have a book that takes place here in Richmond. It's called The House is on Fire by Rachel Beanland. This is a historical. Again, it comes out on April 4th. And this is based on the true events of a Richmond theater fire in 1811. And we follow four very different people who at the same moment have to make a split moment decision that is life and death. And then how that affects events in their lives in particular. I just love that it's something that takes place right here in Richmond in 1811. So I'm very excited to read The House is on Fire. Kate Morton is coming out with another book. I've read a couple books by her as well. I still have one or two of her backlist to read, but her new book is called Homecoming. And this is another historical mystery. Her books are a little bit slower in general. Like they're not very fast paced, but the writing is beautiful and she does draw me in. In this one, we follow a journalist in London who is originally from Australia. She's a struggling journalist and trying to find just the right story. She comes across this mysterious murder that happens in Australia decades earlier. She's curious about it because it's near where she grew up, I believe. Unfortunately, she gets laid off and her grandma falls ill, so she does travel back to Australia to Sydney to help her ailing grandmother. But then while there, she kind of dives deep into this mystery that she discovered and tries to find out what actually happened, maybe try to solve the murder or just get more information about it. It sounds like potentially her family is involved or a little bit. I don't know. I'm just excited for another Kate Morton. I'm excited for a book taking place in Australia and it sounds really good. Secrets, mysteries, unsolved murders. What's not to like? Next up on April 18th, moving away from April 4th now, on April 18th, there's a book coming out called Symphony of Secrets by Brendan Slocum. Brendan Slocum wrote A Violin Conspiracy, which I really do still want to read. I haven't gotten to it yet. It's on my shelves. I've heard such good things about him and his writing, and I just want to read it. But this one is about a music professor. Again, music is going to be a big part of the story. We're going to follow this music professor, Bern Hendricks, who discovers kind of a shocking secret about the most famous American composer of all time. His music may have been stolen from a Black jazz age prodigy named Josephine Reed. So this music professor, is he going to try to give Josephine the credit that she deserves for creating this music, but at the same time, it's going to discredit this most famous American composer. I don't know, but I love books that have a mystery and music. I just feel like that's going to be so good. And I want to read from Brendan Slocum. I definitely want to read books by him. They sound right up my alley. Also coming out on April 18th, one of my favorite authors, Susan Meissner, has a book coming out called Only the Beautiful. I've already been approved for this on NetGalley, so I'm very excited to read this one. We follow 16-year-old Roseanne, whose mom just recently passed away, and she's taken in by the vineyard owners where her mom was a vine dresser. She's too young to kind of go out on her own yet, so the vineyard owners take her in. This is taking place post-World War II, I believe, or like at the end of World War II. Roseanne has synesthesia, which just means she hears things in colors. She's kind of been told all her life not to reveal that she has this gift, this neurodivergence, if you will. When her mom passes away, however, Roseanne is just like racked with grief and cannot get beyond her loneliness and her grief. She opens herself up to this young man and finds herself pregnant. And the people who have taken her in now kick her out. I think she's sent to a home for unwed mothers or something along those lines. She kind of disappears a bit. And then 9 years later, the war must have happened in between there, because 9 years later, the sister of the vineyard owner returns back to the States from Austria, where she experienced a glimpse of the Nazi Party and their philosophies and the horrors that happened in Europe during World War II in particular, and comes back to her brother's home, wants to rekindle her friendship with Roseanne, finds her missing, and discovers that a lot of bad stuff has happened in the meantime. So there's a bit of a mystery, a bit of historical fiction. Susan Meissner can tell a good story, and I'm really thrilled to be reading another book by her. The final book that's coming out in April on the 25th that I have already been approved for on NetGalley that I'm really excited for is by Colleen Cambridge, who wrote Murder at Malawan Hall, which I recently read and really enjoyed, and now that has a sequel as well. But this is a new series by her, and the first one is called Mastering the Art of French Murder. This is going to be a foodie murder. The main character is the fictionalized best friend of Julia Child. What? Her name is Tabitha, and Tabitha travels to France to spend some time with Julia. And shortly after arriving, I believe, there is a murder, and the victim is found dead in Julia Child's basement or like storage area in her apartment building or something along those lines. Murder weapon that's right near the victim is a knife that belongs to Julia Child. And Tabitha had just recently met this girl at a party the night before, or the girl who was murdered, Tabitha met her at a party the night before. All of these clues kind of lead toward Julia Child and Tabitha actually being suspect in this murder. And so Tabitha is determined to discover what really happened before she or Julia, her friend, end up in jail. So food is going to be a big part. It has humor that I typically really like in my mysteries. It's not quite a full-on cozy, but it's lighter and that has that humorous side to it. And I like that there's another famous person. Agatha Christie was in her first series that Colleen Cambridge wrote, so I'm excited to read this one where Julia Childs is going to be a character. I just think that that's really fun, and it sounds fabulous. But those are the 10 books that are coming out in April that I'm just really excited for. I have 10 more for May and June. There are just so many, and I didn't even put any middle grade on this list. They're all either mysteries or historical or suspenseful in some way, and that's my vibes. So I would love to hear from you if there are any others coming out in April that I did not mention that you're excited for, or are any of these now going on your want to read list as well? Let me know. All right, that's going to be it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to chat with you in the comments and talk with you in another video very soon. Bye.